The guards grabbed Daniel and dragged him toward a dark pit. Inside the pit, hungry lions were pacing back and forth. The king shouted, "Daniel, may your God save you." Then the stone was rolled over the entrance, and Daniel was left alone with the lions. But the real question was this: how did a faithful man end up in a den full of lions? To understand that, we must go back to the beginning. Daniel lived during the reign of Darius the Mede, ruler of a powerful empire. The king had appointed 120 officials to govern the land. Above them were 3 administrators, and Daniel was one of them. But Daniel wasn't just another leader. He was different. He was honest. He was wise. He worked harder than anyone else in the kingdom. Soon the king trusted Daniel more than all the others. In fact, King Darius was planning to place Daniel in charge of the entire kingdom. But not everyone liked that idea. The other officials gathered in secret. Their faces were tight with anger. "Why should Daniel rule over us?" one of them whispered. "He's just a foreigner," another snapped. They began searching for mistakes in Daniel's work. Day after day they looked for corruption. They checked the records. They watched his decisions. They studied his actions. But they found nothing. Not one lie. Not one bribe. Not one dishonest act. Daniel was completely faithful. Finally, one official slammed his hand on the table. "We will never find a reason to accuse Daniel." The room fell silent. Then he leaned forward and said something dangerous. "Unless it has something to do with his God." Suddenly the men began to smile. A wicked plan was forming. The next morning the officials rushed to the palace. They bowed before King Darius. "O king, live forever," they shouted. "We believe you should make a new law for the entire kingdom." The king raised an eyebrow. "What law?" One official stepped forward. "For the next 30 days, he said carefully, "no one may pray to any god or human, except you." The king listened. The men continued. "Anyone who disobeys this law must be thrown into the lion's den." The king thought about it. He liked the idea of uniting the kingdom under one decree. So he gave the order. The law was written. And once a law of the Medes and Persians was signed, it could never be changed. The trap had been set. Now all they needed was Daniel. The next day, the new law spread quickly across the kingdom. When Daniel heard that the law had been signed, he knew exactly what it meant. No one was allowed to pray to any god or human except the king. Even the most faithful could now be in danger. But Daniel's faith was stronger than fear. But Daniel didn't panic. Calm and determined, he walked straight home, not hiding, not running, because his heart trusted God. He opened his window toward Jerusalem, just as he always had, letting the light of the evening fall across his face, and he began to pray. Daniel knelt down, folded his hands, and prayed with all his heart. His words flowed naturally, not just for himself, but for his people and the glory of God. Time passed, but Daniel didn't stop. He prayed 3 times that day, just as he always had, ignoring the new law, because nothing could break his faith. But the jealous officials were watching. They had been waiting for this moment, proof that Daniel had broken the law. And now they had their evidence. Daniel had prayed to God, in defiance of the king's law. The trap was ready. The officials rushed to the palace. "Daniel has broken your law," they shouted to King Darius. The king's heart sank. Daniel, the most faithful and loyal man in his kingdom, had been trapped. King Darius realized too late that he had been tricked. The law could not be undone, and Daniel's life hung in the balance. So Daniel was arrested. Calm, faithful, and unafraid, he followed the soldiers through the palace courtyard, every step echoing with courage. They led him to a deep, dark lion's den. The ground shook beneath their steps, and the roar of the hungry lions echoed ominously. "May your God save you, Daniel," King Darius shouted, his voice trembling. But Daniel only remained calm, kneeling and trusting in God's protection. Daniel was thrown into the lion's den. A massive stone was rolled across the entrance, sealing his fate. The roar of the lions filled the air, and the kingdom held its breath. That night, King Darius could not sleep. He tossed and turned in his grand palace bed, thinking of Daniel alone in the lion's den. Would his faithful servant survive the night? At first light, the king ran to the lion's den, his heart pounding. Every step felt heavy as he feared the worst, yet hoped for the impossible. "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God been able to save you from the lions?" The king shouted, his voice trembling with worries. A calm voice answered back from the den, "My God sent his angel and shut the mouths of the lions. I have not been harmed." Daniel's faith had been rewarded. King Darius was stunned beyond belief. He had never seen anything like this. His loyal servant, alive and unharmed, stood as a living testament to God's power. And the officials who had plotted against Daniel, they were thrown into the lion's den themselves, where the lions showed no mercy. King Darius then proclaimed to all his kingdom, "May everyone respect the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, and his power endures forever." Daniel had not only survived, he had changed the hearts of a king and an entire nation. If Daniel's courage inspired you, hit the like button. Subscribe and turn on notifications for more epic Bible stories. Comment below, what would you do if you were in Daniel's place?